Okay, I want you to imagine two completely extreme economic worlds. In the first world, the government decides absolutely everything. I mean, everything. They dictate what gets produced, who produces it, and exactly how much it's going to cost. Now, in the second world, the government steps completely away. They just leave businesses and consumers to battle it out entirely through supply and demand. Sound a little harsh? Well, that's because they are. The first system totally crushes individual freedom, while the second creates this cutthroat, survival of the fittest environment where the most vulnerable just get left behind. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a really surprising fact. Almost every major successful nation in the world today actually operates in a third world of economics. It's a middle path, and as you'll see, it is the exact engine running modern society. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining the third economic world, look at why nations chose this middle path, trace India's historic economic shift, weigh modern India's strengths and weaknesses, and finally, look at what it takes to build India's economic future. Let's jump right into part one, the third economic world, and finding that perfect Goldilocks zone. Think of this as the ultimate historical Goldilocks problem. If we look back, global leaders faced the deep flaws of both extremes. In pure capitalism, the pursuit of absolute profit historically led to massive monopolies that just crushed competition and heavily exploited workers. But on the flip side, pure socialism's attempt to mandate equality created staggering bureaucracy. Without the incentive to actually earn a profit, innovation essentially died, and that led to literal shortages of basic everyday goods. So neither extreme actually worked in the real world. One bred severe inequality, and the other completely killed innovation. Nations desperately needed a rescue mission to find a middle path. And that brings us to the fix, the mixed economy. Think of it like the ultimate partnership. It takes the market economy of capitalism and blends it with the command economy of socialism to get the best of both worlds. Here's how it works. The government controls certain vital strategic sectors. Why? Because things like national defense, energy grids, and public roads are simply too crucial to a country's survival to be left entirely to private profit margins. But at the same time, private individuals and companies are allowed to operate freely in plenty of other sectors. They can start businesses, compete, and earn profits. So citizens own property and the market dictates prices, but the government steps in to regulate unfair practices and provide public welfare. Moving right along to part two, choosing the middle path. And as you'll see, this is truly a global phenomenon. Look, the mixed economy isn't just some vocabulary word from an econ textbook. It's the actual reality running modern society. You might think of the United States as the ultimate capitalist powerhouse, right? But look a little closer. Its economy heavily relies on government-funded Social Security, extensive public infrastructure funding, and incredibly strict business regulations. Then you have the United Kingdom, which champions the free market but relies on a fully socialized government-run national health service. Even South Korea, famous for its sweeping private corporate giants, built that entire empire with highly strategic, heavy government support. Now, balancing these two systems, definitely not easy. On the positive side, free enterprise sparks incredible innovation, like the smartphone in your pocket, while government safety nets prevent extreme poverty. It beautifully balances the profit motive with an essential social safety net. But the trade-off is friction. When the government intervenes too much, businesses face a maze of red tape, and that breeds inefficiency and opens the door for widespread corruption. Public and private interests inevitably clash, and strict regulatory burdens can seriously slow down eager entrepreneurs. It's a constant tug of war. All right, let's pivot to a massive real-world case study in part three, India's historic economic shift from the Raj to the LPG reforms. Let's trace how this built up chronologically. Back in 1947, India gained independence. It was an impoverished, colonized nation that urgently needed a functional development model. Leaders feared that pure capitalism would just concentrate wealth at the top, but they also knew pure socialism would crush much-needed private investment. So they chose the mixed middle path. However, from the 1950s all the way through the 1980s, the balance was heavily skewed toward the government. The state ran heavy industries, and to protect their fragile new economy, leaders strictly restricted the private sector through something called the License Permit Quota Raj. This literally meant an entrepreneur needed government permission just to open a factory or increase production. This suffocating red tape caused productivity to crawl at a snail's pace, famously dubbed the Hindu rate of growth. By 1991, the entire system was practically buckling. India almost completely ran out of foreign currency to pay for vital imports. Facing total economic collapse, they were forced into a massive rescue mission, the historic 1991 LPG reforms. So what was that? L stood for liberalization, stripping away those suffocating rules and restrictions. P was privatization, finally giving the private sector a much larger, freer role to play. And G was globalization, fully integrating India's economy with world markets. This was the triumphant, absolutely necessary pivot that unleashed India's mixed economy potential onto the global stage. Which brings us to Part 4, Modern India, looking at its strengths, weaknesses, and the current balance. Today, India's economy is a direct reflection of those 1991 reforms. India now operates as one of the world's largest mixed economies, and you can see the modern balance playing out clearly. You've got a booming, hyper-competitive private sector driving global IT, telecom, e-commerce, and manufacturing. But they are entirely supported by foundational, government-run strategic sectors. The government manages the expansive railway networks, national defense, vast public welfare programs, and core infrastructure. Essentially, the private sector runs the super-fast trains, but the government is still the one laying the tracks. But here is the really crucial point. Balancing these massive realities is incredibly complex. Let's weigh India's current state. On the strength side, we see the absolute triumphs of a digital, young economy. We're talking an expansive entrepreneurial ecosystem, a young and hungry workforce, unprecedented infrastructure expansion, and deep digital financial inclusion. But this rapid growth hasn't reached everyone. You have a booming digital economy existing right next door to severe income inequality. And while India boasts a young workforce, millions actually struggle to find jobs because of a skill gap, meaning their education didn't quite prepare them for modern industry needs. Plus, endless bureaucratic delays and a vast informal employment sector mean millions are working every day without basic safety protections. And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, Building India's Economic Future and looking at the road ahead. So what exactly is the roadmap to fix these weaknesses and actually reach developed nation status? Well, it starts with human capital. India has to overhaul its education system to teach real-world, highly relevant industry skills. Without that, a massive young population becomes a challenge rather than an asset. Furthermore, the government needs to aggressively cut the remaining red tape so small and medium enterprises can thrive and create those essential jobs. India also needs to upgrade its agriculture with modern technology and strengthen large-scale manufacturing. And crucially, this growth has to be inclusive and green. Fostering sustainable development and dramatically increasing women's workforce participation are vast, totally untapped opportunities. Because at the end of the day, the true wealth of any nation is its people. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought directly from the sources we've been analyzing today. Can India truly become a developed nation through a mixed economy? As we've learned, it all comes down to a delicate balance. Too much government control totally chokes growth, but too little intervention skyrockets inequality. India's future lies in taking the absolute best from both of these systems. So I challenge you to debate this. Does India need to unleash even more privatization to surge forward, or does it urgently need more government intervention to protect its most vulnerable citizens? The path to the future is a massive balancing act. So where do you think the scales should tip? Thanks for exploring this with me today.